Close contact with a human changed her forever, but at what cost? Human Kira Thorks adjusted her skin tight. Black leather corset making sure it accentuated her curves perfectly. Her emerald green skin gleamed under the artificial lights of the NEX station while her long silver hair cascaded down her back like a metallic waterfall. She checked her reflection in the polished surface of a nearby control panel, ensuring her appearance was flawless. Agent Thorks came Director Maddox's stern voice through her earpiece. A target has docked at Bay 17. Remember, this mission is critical to our security. The human carries intelligence that could compromise our entire defense network. Understood, sir, she replied, her voice smooth as silk. I'll extract everything he knows by any means necessary, Maddox added, his tone leaving no room for misinterpretation. Kava smirked. Of course. She'd been briefed extensively on her target, Commander Jonathan Rivers, a human intelligence officer who'd recently arrived at Nexus Station under the guise of a diplomatic mission. The Galactic Council might be pushing for inner species cooperation, but the Vidian High Command knew better than to trust humans. Their rapid expansion across the stars had made many species nervous, and intelligence suggested they were gathering information for potential military action. Cav's mission was simple: seduce the human, extract his secrets, and report back, a task she was uniquely qualified for as one of the few Vidians whose physiology was compatible with humans. She made her way to the station's most exclusive lounge, the Celestial View, where her target was scheduled to appear. The establishment catered to high-ranking officials and wealthy travelers, offering panoramic views of the surrounding nebula and the finest intoxicants from across the galaxy. As she entered, heads turned. Vidians were uncommon enough in this sector, but one as striking as Kava was a rarity. Anywhere, she ignored the stares scanning the room until her eyes locked onto her target. Commander Jonathan Rivers sat alone at the bar, nursing a drink that glowed faintly blue in its glass. He was exactly as his file described: tall, muscular, with tousled light brown hair. His gray sleeveless shirt revealed toned arms, and his dark green military trousers hugged his form in all the right places. Kavira approached, deliberately swaying her hips. "This seat taken?" she asked, gesturing to the empty stool beside him. Jonathan looked up, and Kava had the satisfaction of seeing his eyes widen slightly. "It is." Now, he replied with a smile that revealed perfect white teeth. She slid onto the stool, crossing her legs so that one thigh-high boot brushed against his leg. "I don't see many humans around here," she said, signaling the bartender. "You must be new to Nexus." "Just arrived," he confirmed, his eyes never leaving her. "Hers diplomatic corp, and you? I don't believe I've seen your species before." "Vidian," she offered, accepting a glass of shimmering purple liquid from the bartender. "We're from the Epsilon sector. Not many of us travel this far out." "Then I'm honored," Jonathan said, raising his glass in a toast to new encounters. Kava clinked her glass against his. "To encounters that leave a lasting impression." Their conversation flowed easily. Jonathan was charming, intelligent, and seemed genuinely interested in her. If Kava hadn't known better, she might have believed his diplomatic cover story, but years of training had taught her to recognize the subtle signs of a military intelligence officer: the way his eyes constantly scanned the room, how he deflected personal questions, the calculated nature of his seemingly casual remarks. 2 hours and several drinks later, they were laughing together like old friends. Kabir had moved closer, her hand occasionally brushing his arm or thigh, each touch sending a clear message. "You know," she said, leaning in so close that her lips nearly brushed his ear, "my quarters have an even better view than this place." "Private too?" Jonathan's eyes darkened with desire. "Lead the way." As they walked through the station's corridors, Vera felt a strange flutter in her chest. This was far from her first seduction mission, but something about This human felt different. She pushed the thought aside. Feelings had no place in espionage. Her quarters were spacious by station standards. Another perk of her position, floor-to-ceiling windows, offered a spectacular view of the nebula. Its swirling colors casting an intimate glow across the room. Impressive, Jonathan said, but he wasn't looking at the view. His eyes were fixed on her. Kava stepped closer, placing her loved hands on his chest. You haven't seen anything yet. Their lips met in a kiss that started gentle but quickly blazed into something more urgent. His hands found the fastenings of her corset while hers tugged at his shirt. They moved toward her bed, leaving a trail of discarded clothing in their wake. What followed was a night of passion unlike anything Vera had experienced before. There was something about human physiology, their higher body temperature, their endurance, that made the encounter extraordinarily intense. Or perhaps it was just him, this particular human, whose touch seemed to ignite something primal within her. Afterward, as Jonathan slept beside her, Kavar slipped from the bed and retrieved a small device from her hidden safe. She ran it over his discarded clothing, copying the data from his personal devices, then carefully extracting a single hair from his head. She placed it in a DNA analyzer. The information would be transmitted directly to Vidian intelligence. Mission accomplished, she thought, looking down at his sleeping form. She should feel satisfied, triumphant. Even instead, she felt a twinge of something uncomfortably like guilt sliding back into bed. She told herself it was just post-mission fatigue. By morning, everything would be back to normal. She couldn't have been more wrong. Kava awoke to the gentle hum of the station's environmental systems stretching languidly. She reached across the bed, expecting to find Jonathan's warm body beside her. Instead, her fingers met only cool sheets. Looking for me, she turned to see Jonathan emerging from her refresher unit. A towel wrapped around his waist. Water droplets clung to his chest, catching the light from the nebula outside. Kavira smiled appreciatively at the sight. I thought you might have slipped away, she said, sitting up and pulling the sheet around herself. On Jonathan chuckled and missed breakfast with the most fascinating woman on Nexus Station. Not a chance. He approached the bed, leaning down to plant a kiss on her forehead. Though I admit I was tempted to wake you earlier. You make the most interesting sounds in your sleep. Kavira felt a flush spread across her cheeks. A Vidian trait. Our dreams are vivid. I'll bet they are. His eyes sparkled with mischief. Care to share what you were dreaming about? She was about to respond with something flirtatious when a wave of dizziness hit her. The room seemed to tilt, suddenly forcing her to grip the edge of the bed. Kavira, are you all right? Jonathan's playful expression vanished, replaced by concern. I'm fine, she insisted, though the words felt hollow even to her. Just sat up too quickly. Jonathan didn't look convinced. He sat beside her, placing a hand on her forehead. You're burning up. That's impossible. Vidians don't get fevers. But even as she spoke, Kava realized something was wrong. Her skin felt tight, uncomfortable, and there was an unfamiliar ache deep in her bones. Well, you've got one now. Jonathan's voice was gentle but firm. Let me get you some water. As he moved toward the small kitchenette, Kava glanced down at her arm, and froze scattered across her emerald skin were small patches of a darker green, almost black in the center. They hadn't been there the night before. Jonathan, she called, unable to keep the tremor from her voice. I think something's wrong, he returned with a glass of water, his eyes widening as he saw the discoloration on her skin. How long have you had these marks? They weren't there when she trailed off. A horrible suspicion forming in her mind. When we were together last night. Jonathan set the water down and carefully examined her arm. His touch was clinical, now professional. Any other symptoms? Dizziness, nausea. Dizziness, yes, and I feel wrong. Like my skin is too tight. Verse swallowed hard. Jonathan, there are legends among my people, ancient stories about the first contact between Vidians and other species. They speak of a sickness that Came from intimate context. Jonathan's expression grew. Serious, you think this is some kind of sexually transmitted disease? I don't. No, the stories are just that stories, myths to frighten young Vidians away. From interspecies relations, she attempted a smile. Our elders aren't exactly progressive when it comes to mixing with other species. Conservative elders are universal, it seems. Jonathan tried to return her smile, but concern shadowed his features. We should get you to the medical bay. Kavira hesitated. Going to the station's medical facility would mean exposing her condition, and by extension her activities with Jonathan. If Vidian in intelligence found out she'd developed actual feelings during a mission, she'd be recalled immediately. Worse, if this truly was the legendary disease from the old stories, the stigma alone would end her career. I can't, she said. If my superiors find out. Kira. Jonathan interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. Whatever this is, it's spreading fast. He gestured to her other arm where more dark patches had appeared. Your health is more important than any mission. Mission, the word hit her like a physical blow. In the chaos of the morning, she'd almost forgotten why she was with Jonathan in the first place. She'd completed her objective last night. Extracting the data from his devices. By all rights, she should be reporting back to Director Maddox, not contemplating a trip to the medical bay with her target. Yet here she was genuinely frightened about her condition and more surprisingly genuinely comforted by Jonathan's presence. All right, she conceded, but we need to be discreet. Jonan nodded, already moving to collect their scattered clothing from the floor. I know a doctor in the medical bay, Dr. Vex. He's a tan, but he specializes in rare diseases. More importantly, he's trustworthy. He'll be discreet. As Kava dressed, she noticed the dark patches had spread to her torso. Fear tightened her chest. Whatever this was, it was moving quickly. Jonathan, she said quietly as he helped her into her current, his fingers gentle against her increasingly sensitive skin. I need to tell you something. He paused, his eyes meeting hers. What is it? The words stuck in her throat. How could she tell him that their night together had been a mission, that she'd used him to extract information, that even now the data she'd stolen was being transmitted to Vidian intelligence? Before she could speak, another wave of dizziness hit her, stronger this time. Her knees buckled, and she would have fallen if Jonathan hadn't caught her. It can wait, he said, supporting her weight effortlessly. Right now we need to get you to Dr. Vex. As they made their way toward the door, Vera leaned heavily against Jonathan's solid frame. Despite everything, the mission, the deception, the mysterious illness now ravaging her body, she felt safe with him. It was an unfamiliar feeling for a spy who'd spent her life trusting no one. Thank you, she whispered. Jonathan's arm tightened around her waist. Don't thank me yet, save it for when we figure out what's happening to you. They stepped into the corridor, G pulling her silver hair forward to partially conceal the dark patches spreading across her neck. As they moved toward the medical bay, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life had irrevocably changed. What had begun as a simple mission had become something far more complicated and potentially deadly, and somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear and the pain, a small voice wondered if this disease truly came from intimate contact with humans. Was Jonathan infected too? The medical bay door slid open with a soft hiss as Jonathan half-carried Caviar inside. The sterile white environment was a stark contrast to the warm, intimate space they'd shared just hours before. Dr. Vex looked up from his workstation, all four of his eyes widening at the sight of them. The Tauran physician immediately abandoned the samples he'd been analyzing and rushed over, his hooved feet clicking against the polished floor. What happened? He asked, his deep voice resonating with concern as he helped Jonathan guide Kavra to an examination table. She collapsed. Jonathan explained, his face tight with worry. And there are these marks appearing on her skin. Dr. Vex activated the BIOS scanner above the table, his forearms working in perfect coordination as he adjusted settings and prepared diagnostic tools. His boin features remained professionally composed, but his tail swished anxiously behind him a tell John. Jonathan recognized from previous encounters with the doctor. How long has this been happening? Dr. Vex asked. Examining the dark patches spreading across Cav's emerald skin, I woke up feeling strange, Kava said weakly. The mark started appearing shortly after. The doctor's expression grew grave as he studied the scanner readings. And you too were intimate last night? Kava glanced at Jonathan, a flush darkening her cheeks. Despite her illness, yes. Dr. Vex nodded solemnly. I suspected as much. These readings confirm my initial diagnosis. He turned to face them both. Agent Thorks, you're suffering from what our medical texts call viritus ardor, what your people might know as emerald fever. That's just a myth, Kava protested, though her voice lacked conviction. A story to keep Vidian youth from fraternizing with other species. I'm afraid not. Dr. Vex replied, administering a hypers spray to her neck. This should help with the pain temporarily. Emerald fever is quite real, though exceedingly rare these days. In fact, I've only seen it documented in historical archives. Jonathan stepped closer to the table, his hand finding bars. What exactly is it? Some kind of sexually transmitted disease in the most basic sense. Yes, the doctor explained, his hands continuing to work as he spoke. Human biochemistry introduces compounds that are toxic to Vidian physiology. During intimate contact, the reaction manifests as these dark patches, which will continue to spread unless treated. Is there a cure? Jonathan asked, squeezing Cav's hand. Dr. Vex hesitated. Yes and no. The disease was common during the first contact period between humans and Vidians centuries ago. Treatments existed then, but they've been lost to time as interspecies relations became taboo. So going to die? Cav's voice was small but steady. Not if I can help it, the doctor assured her. The historical records indicate that humans naturally produce antibodies that neutralize the toxic compounds. If we could extract and modify these antibodies, you could create a cure. Jonathan finished. Take whatever you need from me. Dr. Vex's expression turned serious. It's not that simple, Commander. The extraction process is dangerous for the human donor. The antibodies we need are produced in your bone marrow. Extracting enough would put tremendous strain on your system. How danger? Jonathan asked without hesitation. Potentially fatal, the doctor admitted, and even if successful, there's no guarantee the treatment will work. The historical records are incomplete. Jonathan looked down at Gua, at the dark patches spreading across her beautiful skin, at the pain evident in her eyes despite her attempts to hide it. In the short time he'd known her, she'd awakened something in him he'd thought long dead, a capacity for connection, for tenderness. Do it, he said firmly. Jonathan, no, AA protested, trying to sit up. You can't risk your life for me, especially not after. She trailed off, guilt clouding her features. After what? Jonathan asked, though part of him already knew the answer. Kavira couldn't meet his eyes. My mission wasn't diplomatic. I was sent to extract information from you last night. Was she swallowed hard? It started as an assignment. The revelation stung, but less than Jonathan would have expected, perhaps because he'd suspected something wasn't quite right from the beginning, or perhaps because regardless of how it started, what had developed between them felt genuine. I figured there was more to you than me. The oi, he said with a small smile, though I have to admit, spy sent to seduce me wasn't exactly what I had in mind. You're not angry? Kava asked, disbelief evident in her voice. Oh, I'm plenty angry, Jonathan corrected her, but that doesn't change the fact that I'm not going to let you die if I can help it. Dr. Vex cleared his throat, as touching as this is, we have a more immediate problem. The extraction procedure requires specialized equipment that I don't have here. We'd need access to the main research laboratory, so let's go there. Jonathan said, it's not that simple. The doctor explained, the lab is under Director Maddox's jurisdiction if he discovers what Agent Thorx is suffering from he'd use it against the humans. Kava finished weakly. The emerald fever could be weaponized, that's why the historical treatments were suppressed and not to discourage interspecies relations, but to preserve a potential biological weapon. Jonathan's jaw tightened. So we need to do this without alerting Maddox or his people. Precisely, Dr. Beeks agreed, and we need to move quickly. The emerald fever progresses rapidly. Agent Thorx has perhaps 48 hours before the damage becomes irreversible. Kira attempted to sit up again, this time succeeding with Jonathan's help. There's a private research vessel docked in Bay 12. It belongs to a Vidian scientist named Pax. He's sympathetic to humans. He might help us. How do you know that? Jonathan asked. A small pained smile crossed Cav's face. I'm a spy. Remember knowing who's who on this station is my job. Dr. Vex nodded thoughtfully. Dr. Pax's vessel would have the equipment we need, and he's been vocal about improving human-Veridan relations, much to the High Command's displeasure. Then that's our plan, Jonathan decided. Dr. Vex, can you stabilize Caviro enough for us to reach Bay 12? I can give her something to slow the progression temporarily, the doctor said, preparing another hypo spray, but it will only buy you a few hours at most. As Dr. Vex admin the medication, Jonathan helped Kava to her feet. She swayed slightly but remained upright, her determination evident despite her weakened state. Jonathan, she said quietly, you don't have to do this. I deceived you. Used you. He looked into her ASI, seeing past the guilt to the genuine connection that had formed between them. Maybe at first, but what happened between us was real. At least it was for me. Cav's hand reached up to touch his face. For me too, more real than anything I've felt before. Dr. Vex cleared his throat again. I hate to interrupt, but if you're going to reach Bay 12 without being detected, you should leave now while the shift is changing. I'll create a diversion to buy you some time. Jonathan nodded, his arm supporting Kavira as they moved toward the door. Thank you, doctor. Don't thank me yet, Dr. Vex replied grimly. The hard part is still to come. The corridor to Bay 12 stretched before them like an endless tunnel. Jonathan supported Cav's weight as they moved cautiously through the station, avoiding the main thoroughfares where Vidian security would be patrolling. The medication Dr. Vex had administered was keeping her stable, but Jonathan could feel her trembling against him. How are you holding up? He whispered, checking around a corner before guiding her forward. I've had better days, Kira replied with a weak smile, though I've certainly had worse company. Despite everything the disease ravaging her body, the danger surrounding them, she still managed to summon that spark of flirtation that had drawn him to her from the beginning. Jonathan felt a surge of admiration for her resilience. Almost there, he assured her, spotting the entrance to Bay 12 ahead. Just a little further, the bay doors slid open at their approach, revealing the sleek form of Dr. Pax's research vessel. Unlike the utilitarian Vidian ships Jonathan had seen before, this craft had an elegant, almost artistic design, clearly the property of someone who valued aesthetics as much as function. But as they approached the vessel's boarding ramp, Jonathan noticed something wrong. The entry hatch was ajar, and a dark fluid pulled at the bottom of the ramp. Stay behind me, he murmured to Kavira, easing her against a cargo container before approaching the ship cautiously. The scene inside confirmed his worst fears. Dr. Pax lay sprawled across the control deck, his emerald skin ashing in death, the fatal wound, a precise incision at the base of his skull, spoke of professional execution rather than random violence. Pax cover a gas from behind him, having disregarded his instruction to stay back. No, Jonathan quickly guided her away from the body, his military training taking over as he secured the hatch behind them. This was recent. Whoever did this might still be nearby. It was Maddox. Kava said, her voice hollow as she leaned against a bulkhead. He must have discovered Pax was researching the emerald fever. The director has always been obsessed with Potential biological weapons against humans. Jonathan moved to the ship's control panel, relieved to find it still. Operational. Can you fly this thing? Yes, but we can't leave, Kava protested weakly. Without PS, we have no way to create the cure. Oh, his research must be somewhere. On board, Jonathan said, already activating the ship systems. We'll figure it out right now. We need to get away from the station before Maddox realizes we're here. As the engines hummed to life, a security alert blared through the station's communication system. Jonathan worked faster, bypassing the docking clamps as Kava collapsed into the co-pilot seat, initiating emergency departure protocol. She announced her training taking over despite her weakened state. Her fingers danced across the controls with practice precision. The ship shuddered as it broke free from the docking clamps, then shot forward into open space behind them. Alarms continued to sound throughout Nexus Station. They'll send pursuit ships, Caviro warned her, breathing becoming more labored. The dark patches had spread further now, covering most of her visible skin. Let them try, Jonathan replied, grimly pushing the engines to maximum. The stars blurred around them as the ship accelerated to light speed, leaving the station behind. Once they were safely away, Jonathan engaged the autopilot and turned to Kava. We need to find Pax's research. Any idea where he might have kept it? She nodded weakly. His personal quarters should be below deck. If anywhere, that's where he'd keep his most sensitive work. Jonathan helped her too, her feet supporting her as they made their way down a narrow stairwell to the living quarters. The space was surprisingly comfortable, more like an academic's apartment than a starship cabin. Books lined the walls, actual physical books a rarity in this digital age. He was old-fashioned, Gurr explained. Noticing Jonathan's surprise, Pax believed some knowledge was too dangerous to trust to networks that could be hacked. They found his workstation in an alcove surrounded by more books and handwritten notes. The computer terminal was locked, a complex encryption pattern glowing on the screen. Can you break it? Jonathan asked. Vera studied the pattern. Not easily. Pax was brilliant and paranoid for good reason. She gestured to his body on the deck above. But I might not have to break it. She reached for a small device concealed in her boot, a spy's tool that had survived their hasty departure from her quarters. This can clone authentication signatures if I can find something. Pax used regularly. Her eyes fell on a cup beside the terminal, residue from some beverage still visible inside. She ran her device over it, capturing the genetic material left behind. Primitive but effective, she murmured as the terminal accepted the authentication and unlocked. Files appeared on the screen, thousands of them organized in a system that made sense only to their creator. Kava began searching her movements, becoming increasingly unsteady as the medication wore off. Here, she finally said, opening a folder labeled Varus Ardor, his research on the emerald fever. Jonathan leaned closer, scanning the complex medical terminology. Can you understand this? Some of it, Ver admitted, enough to know he was close to a cure. She pointed to a diagram showing the interaction between human antibodies and Vidian cellular structures. He confirmed what Dr. Vex said. Human bone marrow contains the key. As she continued reading, her expression grew increasingly troubled. Jonathan, according to this, the extraction process would almost certainly be fatal for the human donor. The quantity of marrow needed, there has to be another way, Jonathan insisted, continuing to scan the files. Pax was brilliant. You said so yourself. He wouldn't have stopped at a solution that required sacrificing someone. Cav's fingers moved across the screen, opening more files. Wait, here's something, a synthetic alternative, a way to replicate the human antibodies without a donor. Hope flared in Jonathan's chest. Can we create it? The formula is here, but Kier hesitated, scanning the requirements. We'd need specialized equipment, most of which is on this ship, but the key catalyst is missing. Something called Compound H7. Where do we get it? According to this, it's stored in Pax's laboratory back on Nexus Station, Cav's shoulders slumped. We can't go back. Their Maddox will be waiting. Jonathan refused to accept defeat. There has to be another source. Where else would this compound be found? Kira scrolled through more files, her movements becoming increasingly sluggish as the disease progressed. Here Pax notes that H7 occurs naturally on Chelan in the mineral springs. It's a small moon in the next system. Then that's where we're going. Jonathan decided, helping her back to her feet. Can you hold on that long? Do I have a choice? Kira attempted a smile, but it transformed into a grimace of pain. Jonathan, if we don't make it in time, we will. He interrupted firmly. I'm not losing you, Kabir, not when I've just found you. The intensity in his voice surprised them both. For a moment, they stood in silence, the reality of their situation and their feelings hanging between them. Why? Kava finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why risk everything for me after what I did, using you, deceiving you? Jonathan gently brushed a strand of silver hair from her face. Because what started as deception became something real. I felt it, and I think you did too. Cav's eyes, bright with fever, met his. I did. That's why I was going to tell you everything this morning. Before she gestured to the dark patches covering her skin. Before you caught an alien STD for me. Jonathan finished with a wry smile, trying to lighten the moment. To his relief, Kava laughed, a genuine sound despite her pain. When you put it that way, it does sound absurd. The spy who fell for her target and got an ancient disease for her troubles. Don't forget the part where the target fell for the spy right back. Jonathan added softly, their eyes held for a long moment, an unspoken connection flowing between them that transcended their brief acquaintance. Then Kava swayed, the disease reasserting its hold. Jonathan caught her, lifting her into his arms. Rest, he said, carrying her toward the sleeping quarters. I'll set course for Terran and wake you when we arrive. As he settled her onto the bed, Kava caught his hand. Jonathan, thank you for everything. He squeezed her hand gently. Save your thanks for when you're cured. We've got a long way to go yet. The approach to Trone should have been breathtaking. The small moon hung in space like a sapphire, its surface dominated by vast mineral lakes that reflected the light of the nearby gas giant. Under different circumstances, Jonathan might have appreciated the view. Now he only felt dread as he spotted the 3 Vidian patrol vessels in orbit. Damn it, he muttered, checking the ship sensors. Maddox beat us here. Behind him, Kava stirred in the captain's chair where she'd insist on sitting. Despite her worsening condition, the dark patches now covered most of her body, and her once vibrant emerald skin had dulled to a sickly olive tone. They must have decoded Pax's communications, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Maddox always was thorough. Jonathan studied the tactical display. We can't outrun those patrol ships. In this research vessel isn't equipped for combat. There's a settlement on the far side, Kier suggested, pointing weakly to the display. Mining colony, mostly independent operators. If we can reach it, they'll have the entire moon under surveillance. Jonathan countered, we'd never make it to the surface undetected, as if confirming his assessment. The comm system crackled a life with an incoming transmission. Jonathan hesitated, then accepted it. Attention, unidentified vessel, came a gruff voice. This is Captain Lauren of Vidian Security. You have entered a restricted area. Identify yourself. Immediately, Jonathan muted the transmission, mind racing any suggestions. Kava attempted to straighten in her seat, fighting through obvious pain. We could try to bluff our way through. Claim we're delivering medical supplies with a stolen research vessel registered to a murdered scientist. Jonathan shook his head. They'd see through that in seconds. The comm crackled again, more insistent this time. Unidentified vessel, respond immediately, or we will open fire. Before Jonathan could respond, a new signal appeared on their sensors, a small Fathom moving craft approaching from the moon's Surface, what the hell? Jonathan muttered, watching as the newcomer positioned itself between them and the patrol ships. Their comm system activated again, but this time a different voice came through, female with a distinctive accent. Jonathan recognized, as from the outer colony's Vidian patrol vessels, this is Captain Morgan of the IND-dependent freighter Drifter. The vessel you're harassing is under my protection there, carrying vital components for my operation on Terillian. This area is restricted by order of Director Maddox. Captain Lauren responded. All vessels must submit to inspection. Funny thing about that, Captain Morgan replied, her tone deceptively casual. My operation has special dispensation from Governor Trell himself. You know, the guy who outranks your precious director. Check your database's authorization code, Sierra Tango Delta 9. A tense silence followed. Jonathan held his breath, watching the tactical display as the patrol ships maintained their position. Finally, Captain Lauren's voice returned, noticeably less confident. Your authorization checks out, Captain Morgan. However, we still need to verify the identity of your delivery vessel, 04. Morgan's exasperation came through clearly. Fine, have one of your boys come aboard the Drifter. I'll show you my paperwork, but make it quick. I've got a schedule to keep. To Jonathan's amazement, the patrol ships backed off slightly, and one small shuttle detached, heading toward the vessel that had intervened on their behalf. Now, what? He asked Vera before she could answer. Their private comm channel activated. Pax's vessel. This is Captain Morgan. When I give the signal, follow my ship down to the surface. Close formation. Their sensors won't be able to distinguish between us. I'm transmitting coordinates now. Jonathan stared at the console in disbelief. Who are you? Why are you helping us? Questions later, Morgan replied curtly. Your friend doesn't look like she has time for a chat. Be ready to move. On my mark. The coordinates appeared on their navigation system, a location in the northern hemisphere, far from the main settlement Vera had mentioned. Can we trust her? Jonathan asked. Kavira managed a weak smile. Do we have a choice? 20 minutes later, they were following the Drifter through Terran's atmosphere, flying so close that their shields occasionally sparked against each other. The maneuver was reckless, dangerous, and brilliantly effective. From orbit, they would register as a single ship. They landed in a narrow canyon, the walls providing natural cover from orbital surveillance. The Drifter touched down first, a sleek vessel that Jonathan now recognized as a modified smuggling ship designed for speed and stealth rather than cargo capacity. As soon as they landed, Jonathan carried Kava from Pax's ship. She was barely conscious now, her breathing shallow and labored. The dark patches had begun to merge, covering her skin in a continuous pattern of blackened tissue. The Drifter's boarding ramp descended, and a woman strode out to meet them. She was tall and lean, with dark skin and close-cropped hair, the blaster holstered at her hip, and the scars visible on her exposed arms spoke of a life accustomed to danger. You must be desperate if you're flying into Meridian-controlled space in a dead man's ship, she remarked, her eyes quickly assessing F's condition. Emerald fever. Haven't seen that in years. Jonathan's surprise must have shown on his face because the woman smiled grimly. Yes, I know what it is. I've been smuggling goods between human and Vidian territories for 15 years. You see things. She gestured toward her ship. Bring her aboard. My medic can stabilize her temporarily. Inside the Drifter, Jonathan found himself in a surprisingly well-equipped medical bay. A burly man with cybernetic enhancements covering half his face nodded at their arrival. Put her there, he instructed, indicating a diagnostic bed as Jonathan gently laid Cav down. Captain Morgan leaned against the door frame. So, want to tell me why Director Maddox has the entire Vidian security fleet looking for you? To Jonathan explained their situation as the medic worked administering treatments that seemed to eat Cav's discomfort slightly. Let me get this straight, Morgan said when he finished. You need to reach The northern mineral springs to extract this compound H7, but Maddox's forces are already scaring the area because he wants to weaponize this disease against humans. That's about it, Jonathan. Confirmed. Why did you help us? Morgan's expression hardened. Because I've seen what Maddox's Earth search can do. 3 months ago, he tested an early version of a biological agent on a human settlement in the Cygnus sector. He called it a containment exercise after a fictional outbreak. Over 2,000 people died, and you think he wants to use the emerald fever the same way? I know he does, Morgan replied grimly. My sources in Vidian intelligence say he's been obsessed with finding a biological weapon that targets humans exclusively. This disease would be perfect, deadly to humans but harmless to Vidians once weaponized, except it's not, Jonathan pointed out in its natural form. It affects Vidians, not humans, which is why he needs samples and test subjects. Morgan glanced at Kava. Your friend is valuable to him both as a victim and as proof that his weapon could work. From the diagnostic bed, Kav's voice came weakly. He'll never stop hunting us. Morgan straightened. Decision made then. We'd better move fast. The mineral springs are heavily guarded now, but I know these canyons better than Maddox's troops. We can reach a secondary spring by nightfall. Jonathan asked, you think I'd miss a chance to screw over Max? Morgan grinned, a fierce expression that transformed her severe features. Besides, my regular business partners would pay handsomely for proof of his illegal weapons program. The medic approached, his expression grave despite his mechanical features. Captain, the stabilizing treatment won't last long. 12 hours at most, Morgan noted. Then we have 12 hours to get what we need and synthesize a cure. She turned to Jonathan. I hope you're as good in a fight as you look, Commander. This won't be a pleasure cruise for Kava. I'll do whatever it takes, Jonathan replied, his gaze returning to the woman who'd entered his life as a seductress and a spy but had somehow become so much more. Morgan studied him for a moment, then nodded with something like respect. Love makes fools of us all, doesn't it, even across species? She checked her blaster and headed for the exit. We leave in 10 minutes. Be ready. Twilight cast long shadows across Terran's rugged landscape as Jonathan, Morgan, and her crew crouched behind a ridge overlooking the mineral spring. The natural pool glowed with an ethereal blue light, steam rising from its surface into the cool evening air. Under different circumstances, it might have been beautiful. Now it represented their only hope and their greatest danger. I count 12 guards, Morgan whispered, lowering her binoculars. Standard patrol pattern, but they're on high alert. Jonathan nodded, studying the encampment through his own field glasses. And that's Maddox himself, he confirmed, spotting the distinctive silver streak blue hair of the Vidian director. He's not taking any chances. Neither should we, Morgan replied grimly. My sources say he brought his personal guard, elite troops, all of them back at their makeshift camp. A kilometer away, Vera waited with Morgan's medic. The stabilizing treatment was already beginning to wear off and time was running short. Jonathan couldn't shake the image of her face as he left, pale, determined, and trying so hard to hide her fear. We need a distraction, Jonathan said, his mind racing through tactical options, something to draw most of the guards away from the spring. Morgan's communications specialist, a wiry woman named Tess, spoke up. I could trigger a false alarm in their perimeter scent ERS, make them think they're being approached from the eastern ridge. Not good enough, Moreno, Morgan countered. Maddox would leave at least half his force at the spring. We need something bigger. Jonathan's eyes narrowed as he spotted a familiar figure emerging from the main research tent. Is that who I think it is? Morgan followed his gaze. Colonel Bren, Maddox's second in command and chief enforcer. Nasty piece of work and the perfect distraction, Jonathan said. A plan forming. Tess, can you intercept the communications? Already she replied with a hint of pride. Standard Vidian encryption, child's play. Good, I need you to send a priority alert from Maddox to their ship in orbit, make it look like he's discovered something critical about the emerald fever and needs additional research equipment. Immediately Morgan caught on quickly. Bren would be sent to oversee the transfer personally, he wouldn't trust anyone else. Exactly, Jonathan confirmed. And Maddox would send most of his guard, with Brent leaving the spring lightly defended. Tessa's fingers flew over her portable console. Message sent, now we wait. They didn't have to wait long. Within minutes, the encampment burst into activity. Bren could be seen receiving orders from Maddox, then quickly assembling a team. 8 of the 12 guards fell into formation behind him as they headed toward the landing pad where their shuttle waited. That's our window, Morgan said, signaling to her remaining crew members. We move in 5 minutes. Standard infiltration pattern. Jonathan checked his borrowed blaster. I'll take point. The spring is our primary objective. We need enough of compound Higger 7 to synthesize the cure. My people will handle Maddox and his remaining guards, Morgan assured him. Just get what you need and get out. The plan worked perfectly at first. Jonathan slipped past the perimeter sensors using a scrambler test had provided. Morgan's crew created a series of small diversions that kept the remaining guards occupied while Jonathan made his way to the spring. He had just finished filling the specialized collection vials when a shout rang out. One of the guards had spotted him before Jonathan could react. Blaster fire erupted around him, scorching the rock near his head. We've been compromised, Morgan's voice came through his earpiece. Get out of there. Jonan ducked behind a boulder, returning fire as he tried to make his way back to the extraction point. More guards appeared, cutting off his escape route. He was pinned down. The precious vials of compound wage show 7 clutched tightly in his hand. Through the chaos, he spotted Maddox watching from the entrance of his tent, a cold smile on his face. The Vidian director raised his own weapon, taking careful aim at Jonathan's position. The blast came from an unexpected direction, not from Maddox but from behind Jonathan. He turned to see Kava standing there, Morgan's medic supporting her weight, a blaster trembling in her hand. She had somehow made it to the battlefield despite her condition. Jonathan, run, she shouted, firing again to provide cover. He sprinted toward her, dodging blaster fire. They were almost clear when Maddox's shot found its mark, catching Jonathan the shoulder. The impact spun him around, sending him crashing to the ground. Pain exploded through his body, but his grip on the vials remained firm. Kava was at his side, instantly her weakened body somehow finding the strength to help him up. I've got you, she whispered, her armor around his waist. Morgan appeared from the shadows, providing covering fire as they retreated. Move the ships ready for takeoff. They stumbled toward the extraction point, Jonathan fighting like through the pain of his wound, Kava struggling against the disease ravaging her body behind them. Maddox's forces regrouped, pursuing relentlessly. We're not going to make it, Jonathan gasped, feeling blood soaking through his shirt. Yes, we are, Kabir insisted, her voice stronger than it had been in hours. I didn't seduce the most handsome human in the galaxy just to watch him die on some forgotten moon, despite everything, the pain, the danger, the desperate situation. Jonathan found himself laughing. Is that what I am, the most handsome human in the galaxy? Top 5 at least, she replied with a ghost of her former flirtatious smile. I'll need more research to make a final determination. They reached Morgan's ship just as Maddox's reinforcements arrived. Blaster fire peppered the hull as the boarding ramp closed behind them. The engines roared to life, and moments later they were airborne, breaking through Terran's atmosphere into open space. In the medical bay, Morgan's crew worked frantically, the medic treating Jonathan's wound while Tess and the ship's engineer began the process of synthesizing the cure using the compound H7. How long? Jonathan asked through gritted teeth as the medic extracted the blaster bolt from his shoulder. The synthesis will take at least 3 hours. Tess replied, not looking up from her work. If it works at all. Cav lay on the adjacent bed, her condition deteriorating rapidly. Now that the stabilizing treatment had worn off completely, the dark patches had spread to cover nearly all of her visible skin, and her breathing had become shallow and labored. She doesn't have 3 hours, the medic warned, finishing with Jonathan's wound. The disease is accelerating. Jonathan pushed himself up. Despite the pain, moving to Cav's side. There has to be something we can do. There might be, friend Nakian Saring said, entering the medical bay. A temporary measure. Pax's notes mentioned that direct exposure to the antibodies in human blood could slow the progression, not cure it, but buy time. My blood? Jonathan asked, already rolling up his sleeve. Take what you need. The medic shook his head. You've lost too much already from your wound. It would be dangerous. I don't care, Jonathan insisted. Do it. As the medic reluctantly prepared the transfusion equipment, Jonathan took Cav's hand in his. Her eyes fluttered open, focusing on him with effort. Always the hero, she murmured. Is this how all humans court life-threatening adventures and blood donations? Only the ones worth keeping, he replied softly, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. And am I? She asked, vulnerability showing through her brave facade. We're keeping. Jonathan leaned closer, his lips brushing against hers in a gentle kiss. More than anything I've found in this galaxy. The transfusion began, Jonathan's blood flowing into Kira's veins, a temporary lifeline while the cure was synthesized. As the minutes passed, a miracle seemed to unfold before their eyes. The progression of the dark patches slowed, then stopped. Cav Vera's breathing became more regular, and some color returned to her face. It's working, the medic confirmed, checking her vital signs. The antibodies in your blood are neutralizing the toxins temporarily. It should buy us the time we need. Morgan watched from the doorway, an unreadable expression on her face. You two are something else, she finally said. A human and a Vidian risking everything for each other. Never thought I'd see the day. Love doesn't recognize species, Jonathan replied, simply not taking his eyes off Kavira. Apparently neither does this disease, Morgan quipped, but there was no malice in her tone. Rest while you can. We're not out of danger yet. Maddox will have alerted every Vidian vessel in the sector. We've got a long fight ahead. As Morgan left, Kavira squeezed Jonathan's hand weakly. She's right, Maddox won't give up, not while I'm still alive and carrying the disease he wants to weaponize. Then just have to stop him for good, Jonathan said with determination. Once you're cured. Kabir's eyes held his, a silent promise passing between them. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The spy who'd fallen for her target, and the man who'd risked everything for the woman sent to betray him. It's ready, Tess announced, holding up a vial of luminescent blue liquid. The cure. Jonathan squeezed Cav's hand as Morgan's medic carefully administered the synthesized treatment for 310 hours. Jonathan's blood transfusion had kept the emerald fever at bay, buying them precious time now as the cure flowed into Cav's veins. Everyone in the medical bay held their breath. How long until we know if it works? Jonathan asked, not taking his eyes off Cav's face. Minutes. If Pax's research is accurate, the medic replied, monitoring her vital signs. Cav's eyes fluttered open, finding Jonathan's. If this doesn't work it will, he interrupted firmly. And when it does, I'm taking you somewhere with actual beaches. No more medical bays in research vessels. A small smile touched her lips. Is that a promise, Commander? Before Jonathan could answer, the ship lurched violently, throwing everyone off balance. Warning alarms blared throughout the vessel. We've got company. Morgan's voice came over the intercom. Maddox found us. Everyone to battle stations. Jonathan helped Kava sit up, noticing with relief that some of the dark patches on her skin were already beginning to fade. Stay here, he told her. You need to rest while the cure works. Not a chance, she replied, swinging her legs over the side of the bed. Though still weak, determination burned in her eyes. This is my fight too, they made Their way to the bridge where Morgan was executing evasive maneuvers through the view screen they could see Maddox's command ship, a sleek Vidian cruiser flanked by two smaller patrol vessels. "They're trying to box us in," Morgan explained, her hands dancing across the controls. "Force us toward the gas giant's gravity well. Can we outrun them?" Jonathan asked, bracing himself as the ship shuddered under weapons fire. "Not with our engines damaged from that first hit," Morgan replied grimly. "We need another option." Kava studied the tactical display, her intelligence training kicking in. Despite her weakened state there, she pointed to a dense asteroid field at the edge of the system. "If we can reach those asteroids, we might lose them or get pulverized," Morgan countered, but she was already adjusting their course. "Hold on to something." The drifter accelerated toward the asteroid field, engines straining behind them. Maddox's ships gave chase, continuing to fire. A direct hit to their rear shields sent sparks flying across the bridge, shields at 30%. Tess called from her station, "We can't take another hit like that." They entered the asteroid field at dangerous speed. Morgan's piloting skills put to the ultimate test as she navigated between massive rocks tumbling through space. The pursuing ships hesitated at the field's edge, then followed more cautiously. "We're buying time, but they're still on our tail," Morgan said, her face tense with concentration. Jonathan turned to Vera, noticing that more of the dark patches had faded. "The cure was working." "How are you feeling?" "Better," she confirmed. "Strong enough to fight." Her eyes met his, a silent understanding passing between them. "We can't keep running forever." "No," Jonathan agreed. "We need to end this for good." A plan formed in his mind, dangerous, possibly suicidal, but with a chance of success. He outlined it quickly to Morgan and Kavira. "That's insane," Morgan said when he finished. "I like it." 30 minutes later, the drifter emerged from the asteroid field, apparently damaged and drifting as predicted. Maddox's command ship approached cautiously, weapons trained on them. "They're hailing us," Tess reported. "Put it through," Morgan ordered. Director Maddox's face appeared on the view screen, his expression one of cold triumph. "Captain Morgan, I must commend your piloting skills, but this chase ends now. Surrender Agent Thorks and Commander Rivers, and I might let the rest of you live." Bold words from someone who murders scientists and develops illegal biological weapons, Morgan replied coolly. Maddox's eyes narrowed. "I'm protecting my people from the human threat. History will vindicate me." "History is written by the survivor," Morgan countered, "and today that won't be you." Now at her signal, Jonathan and Kafora, who had been hiding off-screen, activated the transporter Morgan's crew had hastily modified in a shimmer of energy. They materialized aboard Maddox's command ship directly outside the bridge, using Vera's security codes still valid. Despite her fugitive status, they bypassed the door locks and burst onto the bridge. The Vidian crew, caught completely by surprise, had no time to react before Jonathan and Kava had secured the room. Director Maddox, Kava said, training her blaster on her former superior. "By authority of the Vidian High Council, you're under arrest for illegal weapons development, the murder of Dr. Pax, and conspiracy against allied species." Maddox laughed, seemingly unperturbed by the weapons pointed at him. "You have no authority here, Agent Thorks. You're a traitor to your species, infected with a human disease in more ways than one." His eyes flicked to Jonathan with disgust. "That's where you're wrong," Jonathan said, activating a communication device. Test now on the main view screen. The transmission Morgan's crew had been broadcasting throughout their chase appeared. It complete record of Maddox's illegal activities, from Pax's murder to his pursuit of the Emerald Fever as a weapon, all transmitted directly to the Galactic Council and Vidian High Command. "Your career is over," Maddox, Kavra said. "In the Emerald Fever will never be weaponized. The cure we synthesized is already being transmitted to medical facilities throughout the galaxy." Maddox's composure Finally cracked with a snarl of rage, he lunged for a hidden weapon. Jonathan moved faster, tackling the director too. The ground. They struggled briefly before Kava delivered a precise strike that rendered Maddox unconscious. Nice move, Jonathan commented, rising to his feet. I wasn't always a seduction specialist. Kava replied with a wink. Some missions required a more direct approach. With Maddox secured and his crew surrendering without further resistance, they contacted Vidian High Command. To their relief, the Council had already received Moran's transmission and dispatched peacekeepers to take Maddox into custody. 3 days later, aboard a Galactic Council medical station, Jonathan stood at a viewport watching distant stars. The door behind him slid open and he turned to see Kavra enter. Her emerald skin had returned to its vibrant hue, all traces of the emerald fever gone. The doctors say I'm completely cured, she announced, moving to stand beside him. No lingering effects, so I heard, Jonathan replied, unable to keep the smile from his face. They're calling it a medical miracle. They're calling it more than that, Cavier said. The Council is fascinated by how human antibodies neutralize the disease. They're talking about a new era of human-Vidian medical cooperation, from deadly STD to diplomatic breakthrough. Jonathan mused, not bad for a week's work. Kavira laughed, the sound warming him from within. Speaking of work, I've been offered a new position, liaison between Vidian intelligence and the Human Alliance. Sounds important, Jonathan said, studying her face. Will you take it? That depends, she replied, stepping closer until they were mere inches apart, on whether my counterpart in the Human Alliance would be amenable to a very close working relationship. Jonathan's hands found her waist, drawing her against him. I think that could be arranged. The Alliance has been looking for someone to head their new Joint Operations Division. Convenient, Kava murmured, her lips brushing his. Though I should warn you, Vidian liaison officers are known for their thorough approach to interspecies relations. Is that so? Jonathan's voice dropped to a whisper. Care to demonstrate. Their lips met in a kiss that held all the promise of their future together, a future neither had imagined when Coda had first approached Jonathan in that lounge on Nexus Station. What had begun as a mission of deception had transformed into something genuine and powerful, transcending the boundaries between their species. Later, as they lay together in Jonathan's quarters, Kavira traced the scar on his shoulder where Maddox's blaster had struck him. In ancient Vidian culture, there's a belief that when two beings share blood during a life-threatening ordeal, their souls become entwined. Is that why you're stuck with me? Jonathan asked, pulling her closer. Some mystical Vidian bond? No, she replied softly. I'm with you because you showed me something I never expected to find on my mission. What's that? Humanity, Kavir said simply. Not just the species, but the quality, compassion, sacrifice, love. She looked up at him, silver hair spilling across his chest. You humans have a remarkable capacity for connection. It's your greatest strength, strong enough to overcome a deadly alien STD, apparently, Jonathan teased, earning a playful swat from Kava. Don't get too smug, she warned with mock severity. The medical report says I'm still technically a carrier. Any future intimate encounters between us will require regular treatments to prevent a recurrence. Jonathan's eyebrows rose. Future encounters? How many are you planning exactly? Kav's smile turned mischievous as she leaned in to kiss him. Again, let's just say you'll need to clear your schedule, Commander. This liaison position requires very thorough attention. As their lips met once more, Jonathan reflected on the strange journey that had brought them together: a seduction mission, a deadly disease, a mad scientist plot, all leading to this moment of connection between two beings from different worlds. Sometimes, he thought as he pulled Kabir closer, the most unexpected complications led to the most perfect outcomes, even if they did involve the galaxy's most unusual sexual transmitted disease.